Secretary Jewell, I want to commend you and your department for recognizing the value of the Land, Water, and Conservation Fund, both to our country as well as to Montana. Some of these importantly locally supported projects are ranked high in your budget proposal, and I will do all I can to support robust funding through LWCF throughout this process. I also want to commend your department for recommending a slightly higher level of funding for the Bureau of Reclamation rural water projects. Senator Franken earlier, I think, requested that we relook at that. I still think the recommended level is too low. It's well below the enacted level. And as we chat with tribes, particularly, as well as rural communities across Montana, it's very, very important. And it would certainly help Congress in the appropriations process, speaking as a member of the Appropriations Committee, if the department prioritized this funding better in its budget. But I want to transition to the issue I think Senator Barrasso brought up on coal leasing. In Montana, we do see the moratorium on coal leasing as a direct assault on our state. Our state relies on production of coal, including federal coal, to support our state's essential services. Montana tribes like the Crow tribe rely on coal production to fund its tribal essential services. Coal creates good-paying union and tribal jobs and also, very importantly, affordable electricity prices. Yet this administration seems committed to taking that lifeline away. Combined with the EPA power plan, now with this moratorium on the coal leasing program, it's creating a significant problem for Montana, in fact, a crisis. 7,000 jobs, $500 million of economic activity, $140 million in tax revenues that go to our schools, our teachers, our infrastructure. In fact, the University of Montana put out a study that suggests this would be the most significant economic impact to hit Montana in over 30 years. Now, I support ensuring the taxpayers receive their fair share of the revenues. I'm not here to argue or make that point. However, we must be careful to not make producing federal coal completely uneconomical, a reality that's dangerously close under this administration's halt on coal leasing, and if not inevitable, if our states and our tribes are left out of the process. So the question is, without discussing the merits of the environmental review and the moratorium itself, having done some due diligence, I've been told that up to 2 years is very generous, it's realistic, and it's a well-placed timeline to complete a programmatic review. So given that, why do we think 3 years is necessary for this programmatic review?
Well, thank you very much for the question. If we could do a programmatic environmental impact statement in 2 years, that would be terrific. The pause on new leases on coal with certain exceptions only applies until the programmatic EIS is completed. So if it can be done faster, we will certainly do it faster. But based on our experience for programmatic EISs, they do take typically around 3 years. Can I also say that we do have about 20 years of supply already under lease based on current production levels, and as production level comes down, those may last longer. And we did put exceptions in place so that no mine should close, no plant should close. There's emergency exceptions to do that, as well as grandfathering in projects that had a signed record of decision that were close to the end. So in terms of the reference to coal jobs and ongoing coal production, we do not believe there will be an impact, and we've made provisions for those individual circumstances where there might be.
On the 3-year question, could you commit to us, though, the review will not take any longer than 3 years? I mean, without some kind of accountability or commitment here, who's to say it's not going to take even longer than 3 years? I mean, we'd just like to get a commitment saying it will not exceed 3 years, and I think arguably it could be 2 years.
Well, sir, my position will end here in 11 months, so I can't commit to my successor on a time frame, but I can reassure you that we will complete this as quickly as we possibly can. My goal is to have an interim report out that clearly defines the scope and gets us on a clear path forward with a timeline by the time I'm out of this job.
Yeah, let me ask you, and I recognize you, there's a time domain here element that limits what happens after January 2017, but what are the consequences? Who's held accountable if it goes 3 years and 1 day? What happens if you go past the time? I mean, I came from the private sector in 20 years. If you miss your timelines, there's a big issue with that. What happens if they go beyond 3 years?
The pause is tied to getting the PEIS done. If it's done quicker, the pause ends. If it goes longer, the pause continues. And if you look at the times that this has been done before, and we modeled our pause on what had happened in prior administrations. In some cases, it took something like 6 or 7 years. In other cases, it may have been shorter. So 3 years is not a fixed timeline. It's tied to the programmatic EIS. So the more cooperation we get, the quicker we'll get it done. And my intent is to get a clear timeline done before I'm finished.
Last question is, are you seeking the advice and analysis of impacted states and the tribes, like Montana, like Wyoming, like the Crow, like the Navajo, like the Hopi, and other interested stakeholders regarding federal mineral policies that related to royalties and leasing? My concern is, one, is certainly the timeline, we talked that, but just are we getting the input from those who will be affected the most, tribes and the states?
May I answer quickly, Madam Chairman? We held 6 listening sessions, which included input from states, from tribes, from individuals, coal producers, stakeholders on the ground, before we even decided to do a PEIS. So we did those mostly in coal company, one here country, one in Washington, D.C., one in Billings, Denver, Farmington, New Mexico, and Gillette, Wyoming, to get input, which really advised this process. So we will continue that openness. This is a very open process. We'll make sure that all of those voices are heard in this process.
All right. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.